Hola, internets. My name is Terry Cole. I am the owner-operator of Colemine Records, a independent record label from Loveland, Ohio, as well as a independent record store called Platinum Records with my brother Bob. We have been running this record label for almost 20 years. We specialize in sort of authentic, somewhat older, soulful sounds, I would say. Everything's, forward-facing, but everything sort of feels familiar and warm, I would say, that we release on Colemine. And we've been operating Platinum Records, our record store, for about 10 years. So we are very lucky and happy to do this in this little town of Loveland, Ohio. Right now we're in our recording studio, Portage Lounge, and we're going to do a little breakdown of a recent track we released by Parlor Greens. So today we're going to be doing a breakdown of a track called Eat Your Greens by Parlor Greens. Parlor Greens is a trio on our label comprised of Tim Carman on drums. Some of you may know Tim from a band he was previously in called GA20, a blues group. Jimmy James on guitar of the True Loves, formerly of the Delvon Lamar organ trio, and Adam Scone on organ, who you might know Adam from Scone Cash Players or the Sugarman 3. Our studio here is sort of it's a hybrid studio. It's a mix of, old stuff and new stuff. So old mics, old preamps, compressors, a lot of outboard gear, tape machines, but also most of the mixing work happens in the box in Logic. So we are going to go through all of the gear that was used to make this track during tracking, as well as go through the entire mix and all the plugins that were used to mix it, and finally then hear the master at the end. All right, here we go. So, first up, snare mic. This is our in-house Ludwig snare. This was mic'd with a Beyer M160 double ribbon mic going through an Altec 342 preamp. You can hear it's pretty dirty, pretty crunchy. It was running pretty hot going in. It was right next to, like 2 inches away from the side of the snare, kind of parallel with the head. As far as once we got to mixing, I decided it needed to be even more shittier. And so there's a gain plug-in on, and then there's two of these Sound Toys. Two of these radiator plugins, which are actually mimics of the 1567, which is like the big brother of the 342. There's two of them on there, so it's like already shitty, and then I double shittied it, essentially. The snare is going through the Fostex 3180 spring reverb tank here. As you can see, that's the only reverb being used on this track. So that's a snare. Next up, the kick mic. The kick is the Shure 545, which is pretty much the only thing I usually use on the kick. It's using the 388 onboard preamp. Running pretty hard, but not like crazy hard, I don't think. Only plugins, well, I should say the mic also there's no front head on the kick drum, and the mic is basically right where the front head would be. The only plugins we have on this is we got an EQ rolling off some of the top end, boosting some of this low goodness, and then going through the Teletronics LA2A just to kind of control some ish. Yeah, and that is the kick. Next up, the ribbon. So I've got two overheads on the kit. The first one is a Shure 300 ribbon mic, which is a pretty dark, boxy kind of sounding ribbon in the first place. It's about 5 feet above the kit, and it's running through the 1592A Altec solid state preamp. which is adding some more hair to it as well. I mean, you can hear the tone. It's pretty boxy. I wouldn't say it's like a beautiful sound, but it is a sound that I love. As far as mixing in post, a little EQ, rolling off some of that low-ish. Apparently something up here I didn't like. Again, going through the radiator to shit it even more up. I really like that plugin a lot. I use it on a lot of stuff to add glue, add dirt in a musical kind of way. So that's the first of the overheads. Second is... Oh, we got to go back to the beginning. Second is a much nicer sounding mic. This is a M-Audio Sputnik. It's a tube condenser. It's about the same height over the kit, but there's obviously a lot more top end on this, a lot more clarity. It sounds more like an actual drum kit. This is going through the Golden Age Pre-73 Neve preamp clone, and I think it sounds really nice and good. But apparently I didn't think it sounded that good because I again put the radiator plug-in on there from Sound Toys to add a little bit more ish to it, and I did roll off some of the top end because this mic tends to be kind of bright. This also is going through the Fostech spring. I don't know if I mentioned that last time. Oh yeah, the ribbon's going through the spring. The kick's not, obviously. So yeah, that's the overhead tube, and you can see that I'm mostly leaning into the tube one versus the ribbon in the mix. So that was like a new purchase right before this session, and it sounded really nice. And shout out to Henry from Surprise Chef and Karate Boogaloo and the College of Knowledge dudes for that recommendation. All right, next up is guitar with Mr. Jimmy James. And I'm going to back up a little bit so we can hear his solo. So Jimmy plays a Silvertone archtop. I think it's 2 humbuckers. This is going through our in-house Ampeg Gemini 2, which is just a baller amp with amazing verb and trem. We're using a Shure SM57 on the amp. It's using the onboard 388 preamp, running just hot enough not to like break up the channel strip, basically. As far as plugins for mixing this, you can see just a little bit of EQ and rolling some high end, rolling some low end off. I've got a little limiter on here to control some of the high peaks that might come through with Jimmy. Running through the Fostech's verb again. But with Jimmy, really the main thing is you just like point the mic at the amp and let him do the rest, as you can hear. All right, next up, organ, Mr. Scone. So this is our Hammond A100 going through a Leslie 145 cabinet. One mic on the top of the cabinet, an RE16, I believe, EV RE16. It's going through a Bellari tube channel, like a preamp EQ compressor thing. And so the preamp's adding a little bit of color, but mostly I'm using that compressor to sort of like make sure that none of like the gnarly big notes of the organ ruin the take by like peeking out the channel strip or anything. So it's more acting like kind of a limiter, like a hard limiter at times. I really like those tube channel preamps. They're like super cheap and dope. So Scone's running through the Bellari, and then as far as plugins, we've got channel EQ happening, rolling some low off. Got a little compressor on there, doing a little bit of work, as you can see. Yeah, but I mean, that's pretty easy. Scone's a monster player. Again, just point the mic at the Leslie and let it do its thing. All right, I'm gonna start over so you can hear the Leslie bass now. Yeah, last input. The bass from the organ. So with this, we're running a DI out of the organ that Scone showed me how to do. So it's just a alligator clip on some magic wire on there, and it only sends out certain frequencies from the organ. So that is going into kind of a bunch of stuff. So that was going into the Bellari preamp, and again, the compressor portion of that preamp is acting like a hard limiter to make sure that none of those bass notes sort of like fart out the channel strip or anything. Because you want them to, like, you know, get all the color but not blow it out entirely. So there's a lot of shit happening here with plugins. So for whatever reason, the output has a gnarly hum from the organ, probably because it's an unbalanced output. So this RX dehum is doing a lot of work. If I turn this off, maybe you can hear how bad it is. Maybe not, but it's bad, trust me. There's a low pass on here because we only really want the low end. There's, I gotta tell, the LA2A doing a little bit of compression, and then the EQ just absolutely getting just the low stuff. No verb, obviously. Yeah, and that's all 7 tracks. And then if you want, here is the verb track, which is mostly drums and guitar, and yeah, organ too. So almost the entire mix except for kick and organ bass. And then if you bring it all together, I can talk about the output section. So the output section, the master bus, before we send this off to mastering by Mr. Doug Krebs. Shout out Doug Krebs, thanks homie. I have 2 plugins on here. I experimented with a bunch of different ones, but ultimately ended up with 2 that I really liked. The Ampex ATR 102, which this is like a plugin that settings that I saved, but I'm running the record in pretty hot, and then I'm just kind of adjusting the playback for, you know, desired output levels. If you take it off, it doesn't sound as cool. Oh, but you probably can't hear that because we're just listening to the outs. So anyway, doesn't matter. You can't hear that. It's cool. So anyway, I use the Ampex tape emulation on there, and then the Altec just to add some. Yeah, this is just like a default setting on the Altec, and so you can hear the final result of that as we're going to transition to the master right now. And now you're hearing the master, I think. Did Mitch do his job right? Can you hear the master?